So like if you're someone that is thinking about making a poetry album, what kinds of people do you need?
Well, I think that you definitely are going to need a producer.
How do you find that?
I think there's tons of people. Like they're around. Like
They are.
they're around. Like
But some things aren't there until you look for them. You know what I mean?
local musicians typically produce music. You know, of course, you could always go online, right?
Yeah.
YouTube is full of beats. Free beats. Use this beat. Then you can look into your local production community. Most areas, specifically major areas, are going to have a production community, and you're just looking for the producer that you vibe with. You want a producer that takes you seriously, that understands that your art form is not their art form. Like as a poet, yes, I can use a hip hop producer, but I need the music to be formatted for poetry.
Yeah.
And not only that, but formatted for poetry for my voice. You need, and then as you meet producer, maybe your producer is mixer and engineer that can master, and that was the case for my first few albums. I was my producer, one of my producers for my first couple of albums, Esco, he did a lot of the mastering on it. And so you seek and you'll find, right? But I think starting with your local music community, whether it be R&B, hip hop, or like I said, musicians are treasure trove because most of them have some form of production, or they can point you to somebody who can. They can point you to someone who can, right? If they don't do the production themselves, if they're just an instrumentation, they just play an instrument, they know somebody who can record and produce it.
So, not to get too technical,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm thinking legal stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and because it's the Wild West right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just with like, you can just take anyone's music and put it on video. Like people are just doing this, you know, and then getting there like online doing like copyright strikes and things like that.
Yeah.
So you're working with a producer.
Mm-hmm.
You don't own the music. They own the music. They make the music. So how are you handling that from like a copyright perspective? Are you signing contracts? Are you licensing?
I think I can't work with someone who I'm not friends with, right? That's number one. I can't work with somebody I'm not friends with. And I can't work with someone I don't trust, right? If you are going to do it like now, if you're gonna put an album together, you're 9 times out of 10 gonna put it on a streaming service.
Right.
You put it on a streaming service. You have, as you're going through the process of uploading to the streaming services through a TuneCore, DistroKid, or Reverb Nation, whatever you choose to do, however you choose to do that, there is a you go through and you talk about, in that process you talk about ownership of the song, right? And then you have to know a bit about the music business, right? Songs are 200% as opposed to 100. And so I own 100 of it, and you, my producer, own 100% of that, and that's how they get their credit and their residual, and that's how you get yours and your residual.
Yeah. I mean, depending on how big people are exploring music stuff, like there's so many copyrights. There's the mixing has some, the songwriter has some, the actual producer has some. So it's like, that's why like when Taylor Swift does everything on her own, it's like, whoa, it's like, just having your own stuff.
I mean, like, it's funny because, regardless of what you feel about watching her in NFL games, her as a writer, performer, she's stellar for her audience, right?
Her as a business, a person.
Her as we're moving into that. We're moving into that again. Like, whether you listen to her music or not, you have to respect and accept the fact that she has made an impact within that industry, right? Whatever the reason is, like she's a voice for a large amount of people to the tune of, her 1 point something $billion, net worth. Like she's a voice for some people, and and so when you have someone like, think about Prince. I remember, I love watching like long form interviews, whether it's Drink Champs or Sean Stockman's podcast. I love watching and listening to that stuff, especially because I travel so much. And I think about an interview I saw with Morris Day talking about Prince, and he said that one day he came in with the time, and Prince said, "This is your new album," and he literally played the entire album, all of the instruments, all of the singing, all of the music. Like, those people are extremely rare, right? He wrote and produced and played the instruments on all the demos, and then all they got to do is go in there and execute, and then they execute on the road. Like, those types of folks are just rare. They're very, very rare people. And I think that if you're even just able to write and perform it, that's a rarity, right? How many people have writers? And how many people have made a very comfortable living off just being a writer and never being on the front of the stage? Yeah. So I think that, there are, I think that, as a poet, right, you should be writing your own stuff. As a poet, I've heard of poets who are producing their own stuff. Like, that was a thing. I knew a couple of guys that I produced too, so they produced their own stuff. That's not my lot in life. I feel like I have a very good ear for what I like and what fits me, but I don't necessarily feel the need to produce it myself. Right. I like to let people who know more about music than me do that. Yeah.
Let's get into this concept with the album. People can still make CDs, but a lot of people, you give them a CD, they don't even know what to do with it. I don't even have any.
I don't even have nothing to play on.
Yeah.
I don't even,
my car can't even do it anymore.
Yeah.
So most likely, if we're doing an album, we're doing it online.
Streaming. Yeah, it's going to be streaming.
You're
streaming. I mean, unless you're one of those people, they only market, from what I understand, that is like physical music that is still growing.
Vinyl.
It's vinyl, right?
Are you doing that, by the way?
I'm considering it. Okay. I'm considering it.
Like a limited run or something.
Yeah, I think it's something I've considered because, there are those people who want vinyl, right? There's those people who want vinyl. It's just, is the demand there? Like, is it there? Like, I know, like, I did a outro for J. Rawls on the J. Rawls album 2014, 15, somewhere in that area. And, he released the album on vinyl, and Barb Fant did the intro, I did the outro. And I have the vinyl, right? I have that vinyl. It's having that physical, tangible, I miss the physical music era. I was one of those kids that I'm reading liner notes, right? Especially when they start putting the lyrics in the liner notes. I'm from the cassette era, right? That's when I grew up. Like, vinyl was, my parents had vinyl, but when I started listening to music, I started on cassettes and then moved to CD. And so, like, I remember, I'm old enough to remember when CD players were like $1,000, right? Yeah. And now you can't find one anywhere. Yeah. So, physical music, right now, albums, but you can still get albums made, but, they're just so expensive right now.